Hello, and welcome to my 50,000 subscriber Q&A. God, 50,000 is insane when you consider that I've been doing this for about 3 years now, starting over on Twitch and then switching over to YouTube. I think in like the first 2 years, it was about 2K when I was still doing anime stuff. And then once I got into Disco Elysium, it took about a year to get to 15, and then just from like October until now, 50K. Like that's insane. So thank you to everyone who has joined the community recently and to all of those who have been here from the start. Okay, let's do some questions. So KTCI says, congrats on hitting 50K. Thank you. Is this channel something you do as a hobby on the side of a day job? And do you want to change this to a full-time gig? So yes, this channel is sort of a side project of mine, although it's definitely becoming more of what I'd say is like really a second job. The bigger the channel's gotten, the more I have been taking seriously the production and the editing and kind of considering the length of the projects and that sort of thing. So it's a lot of time. And it might not seem like that just because yeah, it's playing video games and talking about them, but I would say that for every like hour that I'm actually playing a game, it's probably 3 to 4 hours additionally to make that into what you see on the channel. So definitely a side thing for now. For my day job, I actually have a couple of roles really. My main title is clinical director, which is basically someone who manages a program of other clinicians and staff members. So this could be like case managers who are coordinating different things for our clients, like setting up appointments for them, navigators who are helping people get to those appointments, and then other therapists. So just kind of coordinating the team and making sure everybody has what they need. On top of that, I also still work as a therapist, so I have my own caseload, and so that keeps me sharp, you know. As much as I love leading the team, and especially during like the mouthwashing series, it was nice to dig into like workplace culture, leadership, all of these things that kind of in the midst of like developing some of that stuff myself. But I love doing therapy. And so I'm really glad that I still get to maintain a caseload. And so I do some one-on-one therapy, and I also teach some classes as well, which is where I come up with all of the like diagrams and things that you see me drawing in the episodes. So that's my day job. And do I want this to be my full-time gig? Yes, but not right now. Part of that is because I still think I have a lot of room to grow in the like clinical setting. I like being a team leader. I want to see like how far I can take that. And the cases that I work on right now are really quite challenging. And so that's teaching me a lot of like skills and really stretching my therapeutic aptitude. And so I think I have a lot of room to grow there still. But yes, eventually, like I think this will be great to do just as my like main career. I would probably go back into private practice. I sort of have this idea that like I'll open a practice again and I'll make content that is kind of like, I guess, an advertisement for like me. If you see what I do here and you enjoy that, perhaps you'd want to do therapy with me. But I would say that's quite a ways off right now, but it is in the plan. And maybe at that point I would actually be able to like finish things faster because I'd have more time for it, but it is what it is. And also, how long have you been working in mental health? What are your qualifications and training? So I would say that I would call myself a therapist starting like 2018. So that's like 7 years ago. That's when my graduate schooling started and I was doing my practicum and my internship. So first clients, that's like really the beginning of just practicing, right? So actually working, I would say 2020. So maybe this is a good opportunity to just kind of like introduce some of my background, because I don't think I've actually talked that much about it more recently, maybe in some older stuff. But the main things that you need to know, in 2011, I'm 17 years old. I live in America. I've kind of bounced around different states throughout my life. And suddenly we moved to Denmark. The company my dad worked for wanted him to go over and kind of help set up a new subsidiary that they were developing there. And so we thought this would be a great opportunity to just kind of see what it's like. So I went over there That was like my last year of high school, let's say. And it was actually just supposed to be like kind of a 6-month deal for me. My parents were going to stay there for a couple of years. That was the contract. But because it was like my last year of high school, I was just going to kind of spend the summer there, stay a semester, and then come back to America, finish high school, see where I go from there. But that didn't happen. Something really kind of clicked for me over in Europe that couldn't really unclick, let's say. And I decided that I would not be coming back to America and that I was going to stay in Denmark indefinitely. So this was a huge turning point for me. That experience just changed like basically everything about me at a very formative point in my life. Not only was I in this like amazingly different part of the world, but I was also like in kind of an international setting. So I was meeting people from all over the world. And I just kind of realized like there's just so much I'm missing in America. Like if I just went back there to finish high school and then what? Like go to a college somewhere in the state next door? Like, no, wasn't gonna happen. So I stayed. And I finished out high school there, and then it was time to look for university. So I ended up picking the Netherlands. I went to the Netherlands, stayed there for about 8 years. And that's where I got my bachelor's and my master's in psychology and clinical mental health counseling. And then it was 2020, and I had graduated, and it was like, again, another point of like, what do I do now? COVID had just started, and so I wasn't having a lot of luck like breaking into the mental health field there in the Netherlands. The only option I actually had was to start my own practice. So I did that, started counseling just online. And that's actually where my like use of writing and visuals for therapy kind of came to be, because I would be seeing clients in, different countries and whatever else. And I was like, how can I connect with this person through the screen? Like I was really struggling with that because all of my experience up until then had been face to face. And so one day I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like share my screen with you. I have this tablet. I'm gonna draw some things so that you can sort of like get an understanding of like what I'm talking about. Like maybe I would have a whiteboard or something, and I do have a whiteboard in my office right now. But it was like a way of connecting with them and sort of workshopping things. And then also having that like as a living document that me and the client could return to, and I could save it, I could send it to them, like we could sort of workshop things. And so that's where like a lot of my like technique and way of demonstrating things kind of started. It was just basically out of necessity. And so I did that for a little while, and then a bunch of stuff happened. It's a little bit too much to get into in this video, but things got complicated with my stay in Europe. I would have definitely stayed forever if I could, but I ended up having to come back to America. I'll get into it some other time. And since then, I've now like been working more in like the traditional clinical field, therapist, director, all of that sort of thing. So that's kind of like my general overview of background training and how I got to where I am. Okay, next question. E. Cadence asks, can we get an introduction to the kitties? It's such a pleasure seeing them potter around in the back of your videos. Yes, you can. I'm gonna need some bait though. So actually, it is one of their birthdays today. And she is turning 3. This is Nincha. So Nincha is 3 years old today, and she is named after a famous Dutch character, kind of like their mascot, at least I think so, named Nincha. Basically, the Dutch word for rabbit is a konijn. And when you add a ch to something in Dutch, it creates a diminutive. So a konijntje or a nijntje is a little rabbit. And that's this one. Now, her sister actually had her birthday a couple of days ago. So they are 3 and 2. And this one, her name is Mjørine. or Myorin, or Mio for short. And Myorin is named after my favorite character from Mobile Suit Gundam, The Witch from Mercury, which is kind of like a callback to the beginning of this channel, which started with anime. And Gundam was really, I guess, this one of the first shows that we watched. And so, like, I also got Mio at the same time. So she is kind of like my mascot for, I guess, like the current arc, the eurobrady arc. And they are just everything to me, basically. You know, it was not an easy adjustment coming back to America after being gone for so long. Like, I left when I was 17. I came back when I was 27. So just a completely different person. And like I said, the whole reason I wanted to stay over there was because I just felt like I couldn't go backwards. And here I was doing exactly that at probably the worst time possible. And these two little creatures have been a big part of my rehabilitation, I guess. And giving me something to attach to here in America that's actually positive, because I was really struggling with finding that at the beginning. Bryce Lee asks, what games have been the most intellectually challenging to understand and dissect? Which ones had perfect analogies of the mental states of the characters? And which ones did a bad job of doing that? I would say most intellectually challenging is probably Disco Elysium out of the three that I've done. Disco, Slay the Princess, and Mouthwashing. Just because Disco Elysium, like, I have a hard time like matching its level of depth in terms of like prose and writing and character construction. Slay the Princess, every episode I could sort of focus on a theme. I could focus on an archetype. I could focus on like a little lesson that I could package into something, right? And Mouthwashing was like very contained as a storyline, like pretty clear themes. I didn't have like a huge runway of stuff that I would have to cover. I knew I was going to be covering kind of like interpersonal dynamics and work and some of these things. But Disco Elysium is like, I don't know, dissecting a very dense novel as opposed to like a short story. Like, it's just doing so much and it asks so much of you. And even though I've been playing it for like 1,000 years, I feel like I'm like not even scratching the surface of it sometimes. So I would say that's pretty challenging. And as far as like, yeah, perfect analogies for the mental states of the characters, definitely the skill system in Disco Elysium, like second to none. There's still things I want to cover about it. I've been sort of thinking about like doing maybe a series of videos once I'm done with the game in another 1,000 years. Once I finish the game, I tried to make a couple of like standalone videos for it, but doing so when I hadn't finished it felt like I was speculating on a lot of things. I was still calling the character Raphael when I didn't know his name in one of them. So when I finish the game, maybe I'll do like standalone pieces, little video essays or something on like the skill system and the thought cabinet and some of these like systemic representations of mental health. Or maybe that's like a series of videos in general, separate from like any playthroughs, like ways games deal with this thing from a therapist's point of view. Let me know if you'd like to see that. And which ones did a bad job of doing that? None of them so far. Ruloop asks, are there any topics in mental health or therapy that you find particularly interesting that you maybe haven't had the chance to cover yet, or haven't covered as much as you'd like to? This way, maybe we can occasionally suggest games that are tailored to your tastes. I think that would be fun. So absolutely, like I love all of your recommendations. That's kind of how I'm choosing projects, basically. Like Disco Elysium was one that I had in my mind, but as soon as I started to play that, I started seeing recommendations for Slay the Princess. As soon as I played that, Mouthwashing came up. And so, yeah, you guys are steering me in the right direction. Keep recommending stuff, whether that be YouTube comments or in the Discord. I do check them all out. I will try to check out most of them if I can. As far as topics, I haven't had the chance to cover yet. So if I think of like what these games so far have allowed me to cover, like Disco Elysium has been great for substance use, anxiety, competing mental states, that sort of thing. and a lot of existentialism, which I love. That's like my favorite part of psychology, really. Slay the Princess, a lot of like relationship dynamics, codependency, interpersonal effectiveness, kind of some dialectics, communication, like also another huge passion of mine. And mouthwashing, sort of like the horrors of humanity, I guess. But also like how we deal with crisis scenarios. So crisis management, it's been really interesting. I would say what I'm really eager to cover more of is like depression. And I realized that sounds bizarre. Like I'm really excited to talk about depression. And disco has had elements of that. And that's been really interesting, but something that's really focused on that. Because as someone who has dealt with depression, mainly, you know, the Return to America arc came with some depression. Finding my own ways out of that, and also making me curious about how to help other people do that as well. There's a lot of stuff that I haven't quite gotten to talk about yet that I would really like to. So continue to recommend me the most depressing shit that you can, basically. And this next one kind of goes along with that. Color Def asks, will you be playing Omori? Yes. I would love to play Omori. It may be one of the next games I play as well. Here's the thing. I'm struggling with how to cover it because I just won't do another Disco Elysium. Like, trying to do a full moment-to-moment Let's Play of a game of that scale and depth, very rewarding. Super glad I did it. You know, launched this gaming arc of the channel. Probably will never do it again for so many reasons. But I don't want to not cover long games. So I will do Omori, and I will do other games like Disco Elysium. I have to figure out another way to play them that's not trying to cover them in a full Let's Play. And I have some ideas about this. I've kind of been workshopping it lately, which is like maybe I'm, you know, playing through the game and recording myself playing through it, but I'm not doing a lot of on-the-fly analysis. I'm just doing the Let's Play part. And then I'm not trying to edit those into discrete like episodes of content and lessons. That's kind of the good and the bad thing about the format that I've been developing is like every episode feels like a little movie to me. Like there's kind of a main theme, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, like kind of an arc like that. And I do that intentionally. And that has really, really worked so well, both as content and also enjoyment for Slay the Princess, very discrete narratives, and mouthwashing. Just kind of able to segment that out very easily. Doing that with Disco Elysium, like making every episode like it's like a 68 episode series at this point, has been insane. So maybe I'm playing through the game and recording that, but not doing a lot of analysis. And then maybe like what I'm actually uploading is I'll take 3 of those, you know, sessions or something and kind of truncate them. You know, cut out some things, like whether it's just like grinding or I don't know. It depends on the structure of the game, but trying to consolidate some of the playthrough into like an episode is an episode. There's a theme. I do not just want to upload, you know, here's 20 minutes of me playing Omori. I really want to cover it the way I've been covering these other games recently. But I got to figure out the time because like I said, it takes at least 4 hours to prepare 1 hour of footage at the current way that I do it. And it's just not sustainable. I'll only be playing one game for, you know, another 8 months or something. So then maybe you have like an episode where I'm talking about a subject and I can cut to footage of me playing a certain section of the game to sort of support what I'm saying, right? That way I could sit down and play through like 4 or 5 hours of the game instead of what I currently do, which is play through 20 minutes of something and take an hour to do it. But if I just sat down and played it and I reacted to it and whatever else, but I didn't do a ton of like analysis, and then I did the analysis separate and I sort of combined them. I might do something like that. Maybe those like raw, uncut, full playthrough stuff will be like a Patreon thing. I don't know. But there would be no excluding like the best moments from the playthrough or something. Like, if there's a great moment or I have a great reaction to something, it'll find its way into the like main YouTube video. But if you just want to see me walking around and, I don't know, doing really not that much, maybe that's an added perk of being a subscriber or something. So in short, yes, I will play Omori. I may even play it next. I just have to figure out the format. Michael Meyer asks, what is your streaming setup like? Specifically, what do you use for superimposing your writing/drawings over the screen? So this is like one of the most commonly asked questions in the YouTube comments, which I love because I never knew there would be so much interest in how that gets pulled off. So I do have to disappoint those who were hoping it's like a live element. I'm not literally writing on my screen. What I'm actually doing is writing on this tablet. This is a Samsung tablet. And yeah, I'm writing on here, and I am recording on the screen, like using Samsung's screen capture thing. So I press record on my camera or on my stream, and I press record on the tablet, and I draw so that they're synced, basically. I take this footage, I put it in my editor, my timeline, and then I just overlay them, and I subtract the background. So if this just has a black background, I can just go in DaVinci Resolve, say, you know, put this in screen mode, and then I just have the text, like whatever I've written. And then I can scale it and do whatever I want with it. So yeah, it is an editing trick. And then I will add certain elemental touches to it, like with Slay the Princess, there's a bit of a squiggle to kind of match the art style. With mouthwashing, I did some like fuzziness, like some halation and stuff like that. Yeah, I just like being creative with stuff like this. Like I said, I've been putting a lot more behind the editing more recently as I've been taking this more seriously. And that's one of the elements I've really enjoyed kind of figuring out as part of the style, is like how much of the game's artistic flavor can I represent with my own stuff. So that is how I get the write-on effect. Now, you actually can do this as a live element. I have done this before with Disco Elysium, where I can plug this into the computer and then have this as an element in OBS. And you can do the same thing. You can just stack it over your camera footage, subtract the background, and then as I write, it will appear over the screen. So I actually can technically do it that way, but for having them be separate elements, I do them separately. That way I can really mess with the effects. So as for the rest of the setup, like where I actually do the recording, let me show you. So this is where I actually do my recording. I have, well, I guess an embarrassingly extravagant setup for what is essentially just recording me playing video games. But it does the job for me. And here I have some Gundam stuff. And this actually is Ninja. That's the actual Ninja. That's something a friend of mine painted for me. And then we have the beauty star herself. Okay, so that's the setup. Marie says, hi. Love your videos. Thank you, Marie. I would like to ask, when did you know that studying psychology was what you wanted to do? I took a gap year and I'm still lost in what I really want to do. So as far as like generally being interested in psychology, I'm not sure when that started. I remember I used to watch a lot of these like police procedurals, and whenever there was like the psychologist who came on screen to explain like people's behavior and that sort of thing, that was always my favorite part. Maybe it was fascinating to me that you had like detectives who would show up to a scene and they would talk to people and look at evidence and do all this stuff. And the psychologist would come in and just be like, well, let me just explain exactly what's going on without any prior engagement with the situation, just by my like basic understanding of human behavior. I just was like, this is like a fucking superpower. So maybe that's where it started. There was never any other point that I can remember where I was like thinking about doing something else for school. So that's where my interest in psychology probably comes from. As far as therapy though, This was a bit less obvious. As I was going through my bachelor's in psychology, I really did not know what I was going to do with my degree. There was a point where I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to be like the forensic guy, like the on the police procedurals. But I really wasn't sure. So this is kind of funny how this happened, actually. I was in school. It was probably my like second to last year in my undergrad, and I asked my university if I could have a session with the like career advisor. And so I go and I sit down with this woman who is kind of asking me questions about like just myself, right, to kind of get an understanding. And I was like, you know, I've been doing psychology. I'm sure that I want to do this. I don't know what direction I'm going in though. And I was telling her that like I just didn't know really what I was going to do next. And then she started asking me like, you seem really stressed out about this. Is this something that really weighs on your mind? And I was like, I mean, kind of, I guess. And she says something like, are you typically worried about not knowing what direction you're going in with things? And I was like, where is this going? Like, why is she asking me this stuff? And so we kind of go back and forth, and like, I'm getting this like sense that she's not giving me a lot of answers. And I was kind of like, why are you asking me this stuff? She says, well, I'm trying to understand like how you experience anxiety, and you know, you keep talking about your career and your future, and like it just sounds like this stuff is really important to you. And I was like, yeah, well, you're the career guidance person, right? So like, that's what I came here to talk about. And she goes, no, I'm not a career counselor. I'm a therapist. Okay, so there was some kind of miscommunication here. I thought I was setting up with like the career counselor, and I got set up with just a counselor. And so we kind of laughed about that. And I thought, well, whatever, I'm here. So this is, I've never been in therapy. It wasn't even in my mind before, but okay, let's do it. And so we sort of proceed from there. And that just made a very strong surprise impression on me. It was just this way that she was talking about things and kind of like guiding me in a direction of my own thinking rather than, she wasn't interpreting for me. She was almost like setting up clear lines for my natural thinking process to enter and discover things in. Like, that's what I remember out of this, was just the sense of discovery. And I don't even really remember what we talked about. I didn't have a ton going on besides this. And it didn't even really go much further than that. Like, I didn't go back for a ton of other sessions. I think I maybe went once or twice after that. And then maybe she moved on or something, I forget. But it definitely made an impression on me. So from there, I was like, well, that was very cool. You know, like, maybe that's kind of like a skill set of its own that is really interesting to me beyond like the whole, you know, detective stuff. It was like being a detective of thinking and communication. So yeah, how I became a therapist, basically completely by accident. It was not intentional, but I have been following that path ever since. So to Marie and anyone else who is wondering how to find their direction, I guess just be open to it. You know, I did not go looking for a direction necessarily. I was looking for options and just someone to kind of give me information, really. And I got something a lot more than that. But I think because I was open, I didn't go into that session and say, oh, you're not the career counselor. Well, I'm going to leave then. You know, it just was in front of me. She said, I'm a therapist. I was like, well, I don't really think I need therapy, but okay, let's do it, right? And it's like completely changed my trajectory. So, and there you have it. That's how it happened. Nicholas says, what would be your #1 piece of advice for someone like myself who's currently studying psychology and planning to be a therapist? Anything you wish someone told you when you were still in school or just starting out? Once I knew, okay, I'm going to be a therapist and let's get, you know, trained for this, and I'm doing my master's and all of that sort of thing. Now I start to develop expectations about like, what's a good therapist? How do I be one? Because like, this is complicated stuff. You're trying to help someone and give them like guidance, but not advice. And you do have to have an intellectual depth about psychology, but not really use it. like up front, right? Like sitting there and explaining to a client every technique and trick that you're using, or trying to use that clinical language to do the work, that's not the style, at least for me, of effective therapy, right? Like good therapy is kind of invisible. You don't really know what the interventions are. And like if you do it right, it's a process of self-discovery for the other person. So I would say like at the beginning, I didn't get this, and I was doing a lot more interpreting, and I was doing a lot more suggesting, and a lot more like trying to make sense of it for them, because like I understood, I had a pretty like easy sense even early on of like sitting down with someone and being like, okay, here's their problem. I have the theory to back up like how that problem works, and here's like typically what the approach should be and all this stuff. But like knowing all that shit, I was like floundering in all of these sessions because I was like putting that stuff first before one, connecting, and two, like teaching them as we're going how to do this on themselves, also without them really knowing that's what you're doing. So a little bit like Inception, let's say. Yeah, I would say like it's good to know as much as you can about psychology and approaches and how to do these sort of things, but that's to inform you of your approach. That is not the approach. And I think learning that as I went was also important for the journey. And I'm sure someone told me that as well when I started off, and I didn't get it either. And maybe I'm saying it right now and it seems impossible, and it kind of is, but you will get there. I trust you. Okay, Not Affiliated asks, psychology question. Could you talk about your experience with cognitive behavioral therapy? When do you think it's the right tool for the job, and what do you think are its limits? So this is actually a good point to talk about this, because when I was a brand new therapist, my first couple of clients, my supervisor and my school were like, you should start with cognitive behavioral therapy, because it's kind of like the easy one, right? Like it has a pretty standard method of operations, and it involves like giving homework. So the structure is there, like session on session, you kind of have a roadmap. So that was really helpful, but it also like, I was like, yeah, but I want to discover like something creative. Like I don't want to do paint by numbers therapy, right? And that's like kind of how I thought about it at first. Now I think very differently about cognitive behavioral therapy. I use it all the time. It's extremely good for lots of things. I would say that the best thing it's for is treating symptoms. So if you have a short amount of time to work on something, let's say like in my current work, working in recovery, the recovery process is only like sometimes 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, right? Like you actually don't know how long you're going to be working with someone. And maybe we don't have 6 to 9 months to do deep gestalt psychology, right? Or psychodynamic stuff. So CBT is great for like rapidly integrating new skills, working on problems, reducing symptoms, and teaching the person to be like self-capable of this. Where it runs into limitations is like, okay, once you discover where thoughts come from and how they create emotions and emotions drive behavior, is the like core beliefs underlying all of that system. And that's where I usually shift off cognitive behavioral therapy towards more schema therapy, or maybe we're doing gestalt, right? There are some times where I have these cases where someone comes in and they're highly anxious and depressed and all these things, and I think, okay, there's a big existential question to this person's life that I'm not even going to touch yet. Or maybe they have a PTSD or whatever, really intense thing, right? I'm like, I'm not even going to venture into that complex area until this person has some foundational skills for just reducing their anxiety, right? Like kind of bringing themselves down on the scale. So we're doing DBT, we're doing CBT, just kind of teaching them how to navigate the basics of mental health. And then what unique approach can I bring into this, right? Like, are we breaking into internal family systems? Are we doing more like solutions focused, or whatever the deeper work is? So in short, it's very good, very effective, but it can't do everything. Tia asks, did you learn any life lessons in Europe that you carry into therapy? Yes, absolutely. One of the most surprising things for me moving to Europe was realizing how brainwashed I was. Like, you grow up in America and you just assume that what you're learning about the rest of the world is, I guess, accurate. But I learned how narrow the scope of that understanding is. Basically, yeah, I mean, like, I didn't think about this stuff a ton before I went somewhere else. And then, like, I met all these people from all over the world, and they started asking me stuff like, do you really pray to your flag? Are the portions really like that large when you're eating stuff? Like, just shit that I didn't think about. But here I'm adjusting to this new way of life, and my understanding of like what's like normal for people start to be recalibrated. And what that taught me was basically like everything that I know with 110% certainty is not that way. And I should like check my assumptions, all of them, every single one, because like basic truths that I thought, America's always the good guys, right? Like just whatever, right? Like it's stuff that was not put in front of me, let's say, before I went elsewhere. And so it's part of the reason why I stayed there and never planned to come back, is because like I became very attached to being in this environment where I was being forced to rethink everything and rethink myself. Like maybe in some ways, like going to other cultures and interacting with other people, like it taught me the value of self-reflection. It taught me to challenge my assumptions. It taught me how to ask for information outside of my own biases and like a more complicated view of the world. And I just loved being in that environment. I loved being surrounded by that every day. Even 8 years after living there, like every day still felt like it was a learning environment and also an adventure. And so I became very, very attached to my experiences there. And I think that carries into therapy. I think the process of self-discovery and yeah, developing your self-relationship are so essential to any of this work. And so it was hugely informative into all of that. Alyssa asks, what advice would you give to someone trying to move from the US to Europe with a career in healthcare? I will let you know when I figure it out. No, so okay, technically I moved to Europe and then back to America and then to Europe, like, so I've been kind of back and forth. There was 1 year in between my undergrad and my master's where, like I said, I didn't really know what I was going to do after the undergrad. And so I like just went back to America and I realized, oh my God, this is such a huge mistake. I have to go back. And so in that year, I went back to Europe again, back to the Netherlands, did my master's, and I was like, this time for sure, I'm not leaving, because I really learned how important all of that was to me. But then COVID happened and a bunch of stuff, like I said, I'm not going to get into it, but let's just say I'm in the same boat as you. I can only speak for the Netherlands because that's the only country that I would know anything about this, but my visa structure while I was working there was something called an eenmanszaak, which is like a sole proprietorship, and you basically have to like apply with a business plan to the Dutch government to basically say why your contribution to their society is essential, and yeah, that's kind of what the process looks like. I'm actually going to the Netherlands later this year, and one of the things that I'm going to do there is going to go to the Chamber of Commerce and ask them some questions about basically like what would it mean to restart my company here. It was a little easier coming out of school because they give you a zoekjaar, like a search year, to come out of university and work, but I would be starting from zero. But like I said, it's not really even in my mind to do that right now. Like I'm going there as just for fun. I'm going to go there for other reasons, but that's one of the things I'm going to do there is just ask questions. So maybe I'll actually have some more information later this year. And that's just like future stuff. Eventually I'd like to move back, but no plans yet. Dude of 0234 asks, hey Brady, have you ever done theater or any acting in your life? I've noticed you actually can do some really good performances. Thank you. The responsibility breakdown as Jimmy I thought was downright amazing, so I figured I'd like to know. Yes, I have done a very little bit of acting. I only acted in 2 plays before I didn't get a chance to do more. Again, COVID kind of like interrupted some of that stuff, and then my whole life changed coming back to America, and it hasn't come to me the same way yet. But yeah, like I got the opportunity to do 2 plays, actually also kind of by accident. My good friend Edgar from Psychulturists, we went to school together over there, and he was directing a play, and he asked me if I could help him cast. So we cast the play, and then someone dropped out of one of the roles right at the last second, and he was like, can you do it? Do you want to do it? And I was like, fuck it, let's go. Like, I've never acted before in my life, but this could be fun. So again, I just threw myself into it. Turns out it was a lot of fun. So I ended up doing that play and another one. And yeah, I do actually do this on purpose. Like, maybe sometimes a little too well, which is like, I consider what I'm doing here on YouTube as theater. Like, when I am doing the videos, I'm in character, you know? I'm like the therapist guy. Like, this is not how I am as a real professional therapist when I'm goofing off. Like, and sometimes I think it's obvious when I'm doing like a certain kind of voice or a role play. And then I still get people who are like, this guy is actually insane, or he's making all these terrible decisions. And it's like, that's the point. But yes, safe to say, like, this is theater for me in a way, because I get to like take on the role and the perspective of a character and kind of show you in real time how our justification of certain things reaches that point, right? And then, you know, when I'm doing an analysis or I'm like getting serious about something, like this is like not in character anymore, right? Then I'm being a real serious person. But yes, I do consider this, you know, like kind of a theater production, let's say, in a little bit. But thank you for recognizing that. A Smith asks, I would wager to guess that most people will see a fictional depiction of a therapy session before they experience one in reality. Have you ever seen any therapists or depictions of therapy in fiction that pass the sniff test? So yes, with a small asterisk. The best on-screen therapist that I have seen is Dr. Melfi from The Sopranos. And now, I don't think that the handling of her character survives the entire show, let's say. There's some stuff near the end that is a bit problematic. But especially at the beginning and like, yeah, throughout most of the show. There's just a couple of minor gripes, but that's still the best on-screen therapist that I've seen. Her therapeutic dialogue, her diagnostic interviewing, even just there's the first moment that Tony enters the therapy session. The show has been on for like fucking 30 seconds or something at this point, and this is why it's so brilliant. He enters this therapy office, and he's the kind of character who is someone who is in control of his life, right? Like he's a mob boss. But he's going to a therapy session where he inherently is going to be giving up some of that control, right? It's kind of an awkward environment for someone like him. And I know that she is not aware before she meets him of like, you know, his whole background, but I could tell she picked up on that vibe just by their first interaction. He basically comes into the room and he asks her, where can I sit? And she like says, you can sit anywhere, right? Basically making it so that the first interaction they've had is Tony making his own choice, which is like, boom, she's got some rapport. He feels comfortable. His sense of self-determination is kind of intact, right? Like that is a skill set. I've had this happen to me actually before I even saw the show, where I had a therapy session with a brand new client. And keep in mind, this is like, you know, in the recovery space, some people are not even really wanting to do therapy. So you're not going to get this kind of dynamic in, let's say, private practice, but in the current world I'm in. I had someone come into my office and we didn't interact yet. And he sat down in my chair, in my therapy chair that swivels like this, you know. And I think that this was a power play, right? I think the intention was like, ooh, I'm gonna sit in his chair and like show that I'm not gonna be like, I guess, manipulated, because a lot of people have that idea that therapy is a manipulative process, right? If they're highly resistant to it. And so he sits in my chair, and he starts swiveling around, and I didn't acknowledge it. I just sat down in the client chair, and I started doing the therapy. Like, I just didn't pay any attention to the exchange. I didn't tell him you need to get out of my chair, because then I'm starting off with like a command and a consequence to someone who is like already kind of distrusting of the process. So I just sit down in the chair that was for him and I just start talking to him. Ended up doing great work with the guy. Just a really interesting character. And next time you come in, he sits in the normal chair, I sit in mine, and it earned some respect, because I think it, in some ways, subtly communicated that, like, this is not a threatening environment. It's not an authority environment. I'm not here to control or manipulate or find out information about you. Like, I'm here to help, you know? And I think not participating in the power struggle for someone whose mind is on that kind of deactivates some of that hostility or defensiveness right from the get. So, Dr. Melfi, great on-screen therapist. Pez Wererat asks, what made you want to incorporate your therapy work into your channel? Was it always something you wanted to do? And do you have a favorite game you have played so far, either off or on the channel? Yeah, I think that, like, since the channel started, it was always the plan to incorporate therapy. I've kind of had this idea in my mind that, like, you know, I try to bring together all of my interests into like one sort of thing. So like earlier you saw I have a, you know, a piano keyboard. So like I write all the music for my videos and plan to do a lot more of that at some point. But all of my interests in like acting and video production and music composition and writing and video games and therapy, I'm like, where can I put this all together? So that's kind of how all this started. And do I have a favorite game that I have played so far? Yes, absolutely. It's Nier Automata. And I would love to cover it at some point. Again, similar challenge with Omori. I have to figure out how first. So stay tuned for that. Ludwig asks, any advice for those struggling with intimate relationships? For instance, single people longing for love and companionship, while those in relationships feel exhausted and disillusioned, yet yearn for freedom. Yeah, I would say like my most honest advice is learn to slow down. Just generally, right, in your relationships. Because it's such an important part of a person's life. It's like one of the main pillars of what they're doing between like career, lifestyle, and relationships. Like, it can feel that when it's in conflict, that this is an urgent thing to try to resolve, but it's a very important and sensitive thing. And so I think that like taking your time when you're trying to work through things is really important. If the two of you care about the relationship, you know, try to see that like most things don't have the urgency that we imagine that they do. And just do with some patience with yourself and with each other. And for single people as well, longing for love and companionship. I mean, same thing. I've got no secret for finding the right person, but you know, for those who have told me about how they found theirs, yeah, kind of similar to what I've been talking about. The most important things that have come to me in my life were not articulated well ahead of time and precisely planned out. They have been serendipitous, accidental in some cases. And so you should take your time with this too. Nyan Kitty asks, what are the cat's favorite treats? How would you describe their personalities, and what are your favorite traits about them? So they do enjoy these greenies. healthy snacks. But you know what? They're kind of like me in terms of food. Like I think they've, oops, she just got shocked on my hand. Sorry. I think they're kind of like me. Like I'm not a foodie person. Like I, eat to sustain myself, and I do enjoy a nice meal, but like it's not a big part of my personality really. And I find that they're kind of similar. Like they don't rush to the food bowl when it gets filled. They don't overeat it. Like sometimes I'll come home and there's just food sitting in there. They just kind of graze at it. You can tell that she's, I've been holding this tree for like 5 minutes. She doesn't give a shit. Yeah, they like treats. I like treats, but I don't really like, have a really strong passion for them. So they're kind of like that. And how would I describe their personalities? Well, this one is very clingy, and she is like kind of a forever kitten. She is just always a baby. She is very attached, and has a hard time respecting my personal space. At times, she's being very well behaved right now for the camera, though, which is suspicious. I would say they're both quite affectionate, but Naicha is a lot more independent. Like she really kind of does her own thing most of the time. What's interesting is like when I'm awake, this one will not leave me alone. She's all over me all the time. And Naicha's kind of, she does her own thing. And then when I go to sleep, it's the reverse. This one sits out here, doesn't really give a shit. And Naicha is like next to my head every single night, watching over me. It's very adorable. So I think that's probably my favorite traits. Like they are just very unique personalities. Crispy asks, do you think you'll ever go back to making anime content? Not right now. And part of the reason for that is, like anime was never something I had like a very deep passion for. I grew up watching certain animes like Dragon Ball and just whatever was on Toonami, basically. I always liked it, but like video games were more like the thing that I knew I would be with forever. Whereas anime, I kind of, come in and out of it. I definitely developed more of an interest making content on it, and I still do watch anime and obviously like enjoy, building Gundams and that sort of thing. But like making anime content was very difficult just due to like all the copyright constraints. If you can't tell, like part of the reason I have really been enjoying making the videos lately is like how much creative freedom I get in the editing and like the musical cues and being able to add elements and like your experience as a viewer. I want to be theatrical. I don't just want to have you watch me do something and that be the experience. Like I want there to be an informative element, a heartfelt element, but I want it to be entertaining and I want it to be an experience every single time. And so like, I just couldn't do that with anime. Like I have to do all kinds of weird shit to the video and to the audio. Like it just, yeah, it was really creatively stifling more so than like not having an interest in the content. So I won't go back to reacting to it, but there's potential for, talking about it in some other format, video essays or something like that. Like I said, it's mostly down to time. I would love to do more scripted content, video essays, like one-off discussions about shows or whatever, and at some point I will. Yeah, right now I'm trying to figure out how do I keep this gaming thing going and finish projects faster while not sacrificing quality. That's like my main project right now, project management-wise. Javier asks, can it be useful for a person to go to therapy when they're already well-adjusted and have pretty good mental health? What might such a session look like? My perception of therapy used to be that it was something you only sought when in crisis. So definitely, I think therapy is something that can benefit everyone. Even if it's just like a better understanding of what you're dealing with, like what it's called, like what kind of anxiety you have, what kind of depression you have, can be like quite a significant portion of the work, right? Like this is why when I introduce topics like displacement, I'm like, okay, here's this thing called displacement so that we know how to recognize it. And here's what you do about it. And here's how to navigate it when you're doing this, right? I think that's really important for anyone, just to be able to identify your patterns of thinking and your patterns of behavior. Knowing what it is so that you now can say, oh, well, when I'm displacing something, like, how do I ask questions about that? How do I ask, what am I going to see from other people? What are some of the ways to prevent, this kind of behavior going forward, right? Like, knowing what you're dealing with so that you can ask the right questions about it, I think is really worthwhile, even for, let's say, like, smaller scale issues that the average person might have. Shelley says, as you've said in the past, working with tough cases as a therapist can be very emotionally taxing. So what are some of the ways you yourself prevent work-related stress from following you home so that it doesn't negatively impact your own mental health? Yeah, this is something that I have definitely gotten better at, but still have like quite a bit of work to do on. I want to say that like, well, it's compartmentalizing and it's, having fun activities outside of work that are good for de-stressing. But yeah, it's kind of hard to say because like right now I work with therapy and then I come home and that flows very naturally into what I'm doing on this channel, right? Like I don't really see it as being in a work mindset the whole time though, because like to me, thinking about mental health isn't like trying to work on an engineering or a mechanical problem. Like every thought that I have is mental health related. It's in my mind, right? Like the subject of mental health, the views I have on the human experience and every interaction I have with another person is about communication, and everything I experience is informed by my feelings and experiences. So like, I'm always experiencing mental health at all times, whether I'm like at my day job in a clinic, or I'm, playing a video game and talking about it, or I'm not talking about it, or I'm just watching a show. Like this is just the kind of mode of thinking I'm always in. It is specifically dialed more towards like, okay, now I need to think more like a work mindset and a professional sort of thing, whereas this is more relaxed and fun. But yeah, it's hard to say if I even do separate it because it is kind of all flowing seamlessly. As far as like how not to take the work home with me, yes, I've definitely had to be like really diligent about when I leave the office, not thinking about what happened there. I really try to do a lot of my like processing of the cases that I'm doing at work or when I meet with my own supervisor, because we all, as clinicians need people to workshop things with. It's kind of where I work some of that stuff out. So I'm not just like sitting on my couch thinking about like, did I do a bad job at this today? I really used to have a much harder time with separating these things. Akash asks, do you still skateboard? And if so, preferred stance, style, and the most important lesson it taught you. So I think at this point I have to say that I don't still skateboard. I would love to say that I do, but I haven't really in a long time. Skating was like a big part of my life from when I was a young teenager until maybe, I would say when I went to Europe, I slowed down a little bit just because I got busy with school and everything else. But I used to just be very into it. So preferred stance, I'm a goofy skater. And yeah, I didn't have like a skate park growing up. I didn't have anything to skate on. I didn't even have any like real ledges or anything. I literally just had a parking lot. So like 90% of my skating was just on flat ground. I got really good at technical skating. Probably hard flips, was like my preferred sense of style. Like really technical stuff. I'm a big fan of Rodney Mullen, and I'm not so good at that kind of freestyle skating, but like just inspired by how can I make this board move in a very strange direction and then land back on it again. And so I won lots of games of skate doing like just weird different kinds of flips. But most important lesson that it taught me. Yeah, I would say that not having any sort of like ramps or anything to skate on, it taught me about, I guess, a couple of things. Mindfulness, like just going out to the parking lot and skating I would just do it for hours and hours and hours, sometimes with my friends, but sometimes alone. And just like dedicating myself to learning something and trying it over and over again like until I had mastered it. It taught me that there is like literally no barrier between me and accomplishing this, but my own self. Like the board is exactly the same every time you try to flip it. If it's not happening, it's because of something technical that you're doing. And so it really was like just a very pure learning environment for me. And it also taught me to be like, I guess, competitive with myself. You know, always trying to match a standard of my own. Krish Anga asks, I have heard a few horror stories about therapists really hurting their patients, mostly accidentally, rather than helping them. I want to go to therapy, but I'm a bit scared that something like that could happen to me. Are there any tips you can give on helping determine a good therapist? It says like yourself. Well, thank you. From a bad one. And any advice you can give someone who is going into it for the first time? Thanks. Yeah, I would say that like kind of going back to when I was a new therapist, my sort of misunderstanding about what my role in someone's life was is that therapists are not there to be the experts in your life. They're there to teach you to be the expert in yours. And so that's something that I over time learned how to develop that skill set. And that is what I think you should be sensing for when you're meeting with a potential therapist is, are they trying to be the expert in your life? Because they can't be. In fact, speaking from experience, I'm not the fucking expert in mine. Like, how can I be to someone else, right? So I'm there to basically be a mirror, right? Like I can reflect things that I see in what someone says back to them and, you know, qualify those reflections with professional insight. But I cannot be the expert. I can't interpret the meaning of something for them, nor do I want to, because the most special thing about therapy is those moments of self-discovery with guidance. So that's kind of what you should be looking for, someone who teaches you to be the expert. Sveta asks quite a range of questions. I'll try to go through them a couple quickly. Congratulations on 50K. Thank you. What do you like the most about your community? Yeah, I think most especially is just how kind-hearted and emotionally invested everybody is. It seems in themselves, but also in these wonderful pieces of twisted media that we all seem to love. Do you like dogs? Yes. In fact, I would have probably have said I was a dog person before at some other point in my life, but yeah, maybe again someday, but I love my cats. What are your favorite movies and shows? Favorite show? Person of Interest. Also a big fan of Dark, the German series. And movies. My favorite movie is Synecdoche, New York. You said you wanted to return to Europe someday. What country would you like to live in and why? I would like to go back to the Netherlands. Do you like Baldur's Gate 3? Who are your favorite companions and storylines? I would love to play Baldur's Gate 3. I haven't gotten around to it yet. There's a chance it becomes content at some point. I will not make that promise because that I literally will be playing that until I'm no longer alive, unless I can figure out how to play games faster. And last one here. There were so many questions. I wasn't able to get to them all. But I'm trying to pick some that I think multiple people have asked. And yeah, this has been fun. So I think there will be more Q&As down the line. But Art Queen 64 says, congrats on 50K. One question I have for you is, what is one goal you set for yourself? And do you have any big plans or general plans for 2025? So I figured I'd end it on this one because, yes, I do have quite a few big overarching plans for my life, let's say. Like I said, I want to go back to Europe. I want to work for myself again. Neither of those two things are on the horizon for me. They're long-term things. I still have a lot I want to do in my current role, and I'm not rushing myself to figure out how to get back to Europe right now either. But as far as like this channel goes, it's kind of a surprising thing, I guess. I have tried to quit this channel several times. Basically, every time I've switched up in some capacity, it has been kind of like a make or break in my mind. Like, you know, I've struggled with like how to keep up with this kind of content. And for years now, I've been saying to myself, well, what I really am going to do is work on a main channel that's not gaming related, not media related, that's like, let's say more professional. I'm talking about the same stuff that I'm talking about here, but it's like much more produced. I'm going to script those videos out. I'm going to use cinematography, write the music for them, like make them real productions. I have been having these moments where I'm like, okay, I'm doing Twitch. I'm going to try to switch to YouTube, uploading stuff to YouTube. And if that doesn't work, I'm out. And then I'm trying this other thing. I started uploading to YouTube. Anime content does really well. I'm like, okay, shit. Well, I guess let me try this for a while. And then I do anime for a little while. Starting to feel some fatigue, creative limits, right? I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try switching to games. And if this doesn't work, I'm out. Disco Elysium blows up. Okay, now I've been doing that for a year. All right, I'm sick of Disco Elysium. Like, I'm gonna try to play something else before I finish it. And if this doesn't work, I'm gonna finish Disco and quit. And then like the channel fucking blows up again. So at this point, I'll take this as a sign. This is a project not worth quitting. I'm gonna stick with it. Not just because it's doing well, but because I think over time, as I've bounced around different projects and formats and mediums, I've sort of learned a lot more about why I find this stuff fun. And it's given me more clear direction of where I want to go. And honestly, with my regular career being as it is, between being the clinical director and a therapist at the same time, I just don't have space to do that other big project. Like, that's like something I'm gonna have to probably save until I am, self-employed again. And I can spend all hours of my day working on scripting and writing and video and all of the stuff that needs to go in to the scale of that project. So for right now, this is what I'm doing. You all have made it very worthwhile doing. And I'm so appreciative. I genuinely can't believe that like this community exists, that it's still just taking shape, but it feels very close to my heart already. To see people with the same interests as I have, the same hyperfixations on, different kinds of media, and to have such a curiosity about psychology and themselves, and how to live a better experience. Those are all things that I wouldn't want to leave behind now. And so I'm here to stay, doing content for eurobrady. I don't know if I ever explained why it's called eurobrady. Yeah, it was just this kind of meme at the beginning of the channel where I was struggling with my reintegration back into America, and I was trying to do like a psychological exercise of myself where I was like, I want to be like how I was when I lived overseas. I was more curious and ambitious and all of these like good qualities I attached to me over there. And I was like, I can't be the American Brady. The American Brady's fucking depressed. I have to be the Euro Brady. So this was like my idealization of myself at the time. I don't think like this anymore. That was it's half of a meme, half of a crutch that I leaned on. It was genuinely helpful. But now it's not so two-dimensional for me, like my self-identification of these different parts of myself. I've done a lot of work on that in the last couple of years. But that's the name I went with. It's the one I got. It's the one I'm sticking with. So, okay. That's all the questions for this episode. Thank you again to everyone for being here. And yeah, I'm really excited for whatever comes next. And I'm ready to be happy with that, even if it's not what I've planned for myself. So with that said, I will see you again very soon with something new. Take care.